All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. In this lecture, we're going to discuss the central nervous system. This is lecture number 4 out of 8. Can you believe it? Oh, man. Here we go. During embryonic development, the central nervous system first appears as a simple tube. It's called the neural tube. And by the 4th week, the neural tube begins to expand and brain formation begins. As the brain grows, it becomes enlarged into 4 regions to form chambers called ventricles. These are filled with cerebrospinal fluid, which we will talk more about later. Now, in the developing brain, the cerebral hemispheres initially are smooth, are forced to grow over the other brain regions by the bones of the skull. The brain is divided into regions: the cerebrum, the diencephalon, the brain stem, and the cerebellum. In the adult brain, the cerebrum encloses the diencephalon and the superior portion of the brain stem. The paired cerebral hemispheres, collectively called the cerebrum, are the most superior part of the brain and together are a good deal larger than the other portions of the brain. They enclose and obscure most of the brain stem. The entire surface of the cerebrum exhibits elevated ridges of tissues called gyri, and they're separated by shallow grooves called sulci. In this diagram, we can see the major structural areas of the cerebrum. The deeper grooves, called fissures, separate large regions of the brain. Many of the fissures in the gyro are important anatomical landmarks. The cerebrum is separated by a single deep fissure. It's called the longitudinal fissure. Other fissures divide each hemisphere into a number of lobes called for the cranial bones that lie over them. This photo shows the different lobes that we have in our cerebrum. Speech, memory, logic, and emotional responses, as well as consciousness, interpretation of sensation, and voluntary movement are all functions of neurons of the cerebral cortex, and many of these areas have been identified. The primary somatic sensory area located in the parietal lobe. Impulses traveling to the body's sensory receptors are localized and interpreted in this area of the brain. This allows you to recognize pain or coldness or even a light touch. The primary motor area allows us to consciously move our skeletal muscles located in the frontal lobe. Most of the neurons in the primary motor area control body areas having the finest motor control: the face, the mouth, and the hands. A specialized area is very involved in our ability to speak is called Broca's area. Damage to this area, which is located in only one hemisphere, causes the inability to say words properly. You know what you want to say, but you can't vocalize the words. Ooh, don't like that. In this diagram, we see the functional areas of the cerebrum. The more intense colors red and blue indicate primary motor and sensory areas. The pastel colors pink and pale blue represent association areas of the cerebrum. This figure shows the sensory and motor areas of the cerebral cortex. The motor area is on the right, and while the somatic sensory cortex is on the left. The can't even get that out. The cerebrum also houses areas involving the special senses. The visual area is located in the occipital lobe. The auditory area is in the temporal lobe, and the olfactory area is found deep inside the temporal lobe. Areas involved in higher intellectual reasoning and socially acceptable behavior are in the anterior portion of the frontal lobes. Complex memories appear to be stored in the temporal and frontal lobes, and the speech area is located at the junction of the temporal, parietal, and occipital lobes. The speech area allows one to sound out words. The frontal lobes house areas involved with language comprehension, which is the understanding of word meanings. The cell bodies of neurons involved with the cerebrum functions are found in the outermost gray matter of the cerebrum. Most of the remaining cerebral hemisphere tissue, the deeper white matter, is composed of fiber tracts, carrying impulses to and from or within the cortex. One large fiber tract, the corpus callosum, connects the cerebral hemispheres. This allows the hemispheres to communicate with each other. Although most of the gray matter is in the cerebral cortex, there are islands of gray matter called the basal nuclei buried deep within the white matter of the cerebral hemispheres. The basal nuclei help regulate voluntary motor activities by modifying instructions sent to skeletal muscles by the primary cortex area. Whew, say that 3 times fast. This frontal section of the brain shows fibers that run between the cerebrum and the lower central nervous system. Now, what do I need to know? Here are the key points. What are the 3 major regions of the cerebrum? What is the composition of the white matter and the gray matter? And what is the corpus callosum and what does it do? Okay, so here you go. That is the end of lecture number 4.